Governor Lulian Guerrero's testimony submitted to Speaker Terlahi, RE Bill 11, disguised as an attempt to restore the separation of powers. Bill 11-36 is, in actuality, an attempt at legislative overreach. If enacted into law, it would be the job of the legislature to determine whether or not to extend a declaration of public health emergency. Such a determination would necessarily require that the legislature be directly involved in the operational functions of public health or any other executive branch agency that had been designated as the public health authority under the provisions of the Emergency Health Powers Act. Such comprehensive involvement in the executive branch operations would usurp the role of the executive branch and violate the very separation of powers the proponents of this bill claim they want to protect. Certainly, governors should be held accountable for their actions. It may be easy for some in the legislature to describe my actions during this pandemic as arbitrary and capricious and to wish themselves into my position. Ooh, they're getting snarky here. Do you ever wish you were a governor, Senator?
No, I've worked with governors before, and they got a really tough job, so I'm happy where I'm at.
She continues to write here, let me assure you that the authority of the Organic Act has granted the office of the governor to protect the public health. It comes with an equally substantial obligation, one I carry heavily every day of this pandemic that passes. I personally call the families of all Guamanians who have lost their lives to this disease. While I encourage our community to exercise personal judgment to keep all of us safe and healthy, I feel an intense responsibility to implement policies that will protect our most vulnerable from those among us who feel no such responsibility, who are not willing to adjust their personal behavior or be inconvenienced in any manner, and who are willing to sacrifice the health of our elderly or vulnerable to perpetuate a false narrative that the island is somehow immune from the devastation COVID-19 has wreaked on the world. I feel a responsibility to our frontliners who bear the greatest emotional burden of this crisis. We have seen other jurisdictions believe they have defeated this disease, most recently New Zealand, only to experience a resurgence in positive cases. We don't have the resources New Zealand has. We must be cognizant of our limitations. We must behave as though we cannot afford another wave of positive cases because that's the truth. Now is not the time to gamble with our future. But if the legislature believes that the pandemic is over and that the continued tireless efforts of our frontliners are somehow exaggerated or contrived, the legislature can end the public health emergency. A statutory mechanism already exists to check the executive branch's declaration of a public health emergency under 10 GCA. The legislature may terminate a declared public health emergency where the public health threats, in the legislature's own estimation, have subsided. It's my sincere hope that if the legislature deems it appropriate to end the public health emergency, it will have done so having weighed such determination with an overabundance of care and consideration, as I have in my decisions to extend the public health emergency. Wow, so what do you think of that, Senator?
Well, first of all, Chris, Bree, Jason, thank you for this opportunity. I wanted to first thank the Committee on Rules, as well as the Vice Speaker, Tina Munoz-Barnes, as well as the chairwoman of the committee that held the hearing for Bill 11, Speaker Terlahi, for really moving quickly on many bills, of course, this one to be included. So I think this legislature is definitely being responsive, and I'm appreciative of the leadership. You know, the letter is disappointing, but it's not unexpected. You know, Chris and Bree, over a decade and a half ago when, you know, there was a feeling from the legislature that when emergencies related to typhoons and other calamities were happening, and, you know, certain governors, you know, were expending funds at a very high rate, the legislature became concerned. And so they set a limit at $250,000, and any expenditure beyond that had to be renewed by the legislature. I'm sure those governors were not happy about that. But it's, you know, the legislature felt as though it was its responsibility. You know, Chris and Bree, if you look at the CRER now that comes out every month, that came from the legislature, and I'm sure governors weren't happy about that either. Now we have a real-time picture on a monthly basis of what's going on in our economy, what's happening with our budget. You know, was it a good budget or a bad budget based on shortfalls? I'm sure, you know, from the executive perspective, you would have liked to, you know, get more towards the end of the fiscal year to kind of shape the message on how you've been expending funds and things like that. So the legislature, you know, has a tendency to be an irritant to, you know, to the governor's office, but that's the genius of the system. The genius of the system is that you have two co-equal branches of government working, you know, hopefully in tandem, but they have to have at times, you know, a difference of opinion, and that's called check and balance, transparency, and accountability. And so I'm disappointed that the governor, you know, didn't want to work with us maybe a little closer and say, hey, you know, we'll come down, we'll convene roundtables with you, we'll give you more information, we'll let you know what's going on. Because the other side of what the governor says here is the fact that, you know, the business community, if you look at the testimony on the bill, was overwhelmingly in support. The Chamber of Commerce, you know, really supports this effort. The Guam Association of Realtors really supports this effort. We still have letters coming in from businesses. You had Tom Peinhoff, who's representing over 50 bars and lounges and nightlife activities that testified that right now they have seen no evidence, no scientific evidence that's been provided by public health or the administration that bars are super spreaders and that they shouldn't be treated the same as restaurants and other businesses. I think the other thing that I was disappointed with Chris and Bree is that, you know, this is not the time to divide our community. Nobody in the legislature believes that the frontliners aren't heroes. Nobody in the legislature believes that all of these folks who have been really combating this disease, which I agree with the governor, has rocked the world. You know, so I am never going to be one, and I'm not criticizing the governor on her decisions. I think she's done the best with what she's had, but the legislature is the people's house. And if you look across the nation, Governor Whitmer in Michigan what was taken to the Supreme Court of Michigan by the state legislature, and that Supreme Court said the governor had overreached. She could not extend the emergency powers that she had beyond 60 days without legislative approval. In the state of Hawaii, there's House Bill 103, which is almost mirrored to my bill, our bill 11. That bill came out about 12 days after I introduced Bill 11. They have already passed unanimously in their pandemic committee in the House in Hawaii approval of that bill. There's overwhelming testimony in Hawaii as well that the legislature should be involved at some point on approving a public health emergency. So having said all of that, I want to be clear, I do continue to want to work with the governor. I actually met with the governor 2 days ago. She asked Senator Moreland and myself to come down and sit down and talk to her. Interestingly enough, the letter came out like an hour before we met. So we were reading the letter on the way down to meet with the governor. You know, I just told her respectfully that I continue to disagree with her position and that we'll see the disposition of this bill on the floor. If it passes, we'll see what she does with it. If it doesn't, then at least I tried to make sure the people's voices could be heard.
It sounds like she doesn't trust you guys, anybody. I mean, from the tone of this letter, it sounds like she doesn't trust anybody else to make any kind of decisions regarding this pandemic.
Well, you know, Chris and Bree, if you've been reading as much as I have by the Vigilance Committee and other folks in the community since the start of this pandemic, one of the things they've been very concerned about is that the emergency powers allowed the governor to completely waive the open government law. If you see in Hawaii, one of the major concerns of the groups there that were testifying on House Bill 103, it was the Sunshine Act that they were so upset about, that there was a lot of procurement, a lot of expenditures that did not require any scrutiny. Now, yes, this is federal money, you know, and the governor has the power to do that. I will never say that the legislature should be interjected into her power to be able to use the funds given to her by the federal government to be able to address an emergency. But if for some reason down the line, those expenditures are not allowed, guess who's going to pay for that? You and me, Chris, Bree, and Jay. we're going to pay for that because it's going to be the general fund that's going to reimburse that. So when the open government law is suspended, when procurements are suspended in terms of purchases, maybe of vehicles, all kinds of different things, you know, at some point the people start to go, maybe in the first 3, 4, 5 months, hey, no worries, you know, yeah, we're at war with the virus, I get it. But man, I'll tell you, since June and July, although we had that spike in July, which I think was handled very well, the governor actually since March was telling everyone that we got this, Guam. We've ramped up the hospital. We're going to get nurses coming in. We're working with the military. This is our capacity, you know, and we did surge, no question about it. I'm very close to healthcare in my home. I'm a COVID survivor, so I know the fear of the issues. But, you know, some of these overwhelming issues now that are coming out, next month will be 1 year since we've been under a state of public health emergency and executive orders approved every 30 days. And I think it's time, as you said, Chris, you know, maybe have a little trust in the legislature to work with you. I don't think we're going to shut down any emergency like she says. I mean, that would be irresponsible. There is no way I would vote right now to shut down the emergency because I don't have enough information. But, you know, I'm not going to play chicken with the governor. That's not the job of the legislature. The job of the legislature is to work with the governor.
Well, I think it just...
Do you have enough support for this to pass?
You know, I know that I have at least 6 solid Republicans. I have gotten, I've had conversations with several Democrats, and they like the concept of the bill. They want to see the arguments on the floor. They want to see if there's any additional feedback coming in while we're in session. They want to do the research as well. I've given them research from the Pew Institute that shows that Texas, Kentucky, a lot of other states are actually undergoing these kind of transformations between legislatures and governors on the emergency. So I'm optimistic. I think I probably got the votes, Bree. I don't know if I have an override amount of.
Well, once they start cracking that whip down there.
I might have a pass. I might be able to pass the bill.
Right. Do you think Senator, do you think, because I feel like this conversation should have been had last year, you know, during the height of the pandemic and there's just a lot of issues that I have personally with the way the governor's, not necessarily the way she's responded to the pandemic, because I think you can kind of look around and assume that we could have done way worse, right? But that doesn't mean we did the best in the world by far. But just even with the Physicians Advisory Group, with the suspension of the open government law, with us not being able to sit in on these meetings to ask questions. I mean, we're very fortunate that we have a good relationship with the chair of the Physicians Advisory Group. And we're very fortunate that he comes on and willingly shares information. But at the same time, I think if people had an insight into what was said at these meetings and kind of like a transparency into some of these decisions that come out, because you guys are right. Like, I'm not still, I mean, it's crazy opening game rooms, but not unsuspending the open government law. There's really like, it doesn't seem like there's any rhyme or reason. And I think the governor's reaction, it's almost like she's reacting in a way where she feels like the legislature is going to take over everything. But I don't think there's anything wrong with having more voices discuss these things. And I don't know what she's so afraid of.
Yeah, absolutely. So in the letter, it says now is not the time to gamble with their future. And what opened up before, but not bars, was gaming halls and bingo halls. So I think there's some gambling going on. You had an interview earlier, so I think there's a lot of gambling going on. But but in all seriousness,
no comment.
I think that you're absolutely right. I mean, I don't think any senator down there wants to stop the flow of federal funds coming into Guam. I don't think any senator wants to tell public health, hey, you don't know what you're talking about. I don't think that's the case. I think what it is the people's voices that I think they have a concern with, because if the Chamber of Commerce can pen the letter that they penned in support of this effort, and if the Guam realtors are putting themselves out there as well to say, enough is enough as well. We want it to be essential way earlier. in this pandemic. We wanted the Guam Land Use Commission to be active way earlier because there's $2 billion worth of pent-up economic activity that requires approval by the GLUC. You know, if those voices come to the legislature, it's very powerful. And maybe what we end up doing is saying, okay, well, we'll pass the bill saying, maybe we'll change the law with regard to shutting down the emergency in part or in whole. Because maybe the legislature says these voices have been way too strong on the fact that these other, issues should be dealt with. So maybe we just repeal, or maybe we just, move forward on the fact that working with public health bars open. Maybe we pass the part that says real estate should be essential, way earlier. And if we say that, then as the governor said, that power currently exists in the public health emergency law. I mean, it's kind of interesting to basically say you're going in and usurping the power. Yet even the same emergency law requires a 30-day extension after 30 days. Why? There had to have been a vision in there that maybe after 30 days, there's going to be a discussion that needs to be had, especially when you're suspending something as critical as the open government law.
We actually have a caller here. Janelle has a comment for you, Senator, if you could. Good morning, Janelle.
Good morning.
Go ahead. You're on the air. You're on the link. Good morning.
Senator Duenas, I just want to thank you for your bill. I believe that there should be a balance of powers within the government, and your bill reminds the governor of just that. I think having too much power for anybody can kind of get to their head, and at least there will be a check and balance with this. So I appreciate you for your bill. I'm putting it out there.
Thank you, Janelle.
Thanks.
I'm sorry, Chris and Bree, I didn't hear any of that, but
she says she totally disagrees with you and that you should get a real job. I'm just kidding. No, she
didn't say that.
No, she didn't. She said that she appreciates your bill and that she feels like when people have too much power, it can go to their head. And she just wanted to chime in her support.
I appreciate the call and I appreciate the support. I really do. I've had a lot of calls, Chris and Bree, from business people that don't want to be on the record, but that are frustrated. With
that's unfortunate. I mean, the governor, she just takes things personally, and I think that's probably my biggest criticism of her, is that she just takes things personally, and God, when you're in this life of public service, it's so basic to remember that everybody gets a seat at the table. It's not just Governor Lou's table. We don't need to ask permission to sit at the table. We all have a seat. It's so freaking basic. I don't even know why I'm explaining it. But she just is so offended by this that I think she interprets it as you guys think she's not doing a good job.
And I want to say that I don't think she's done a bad job. I think the team did a really good job early on. I mean, this was tough. This was really tough. And, Chris, I didn't mind staying home, honestly, although I was the main, Bree, I was the main forager. I called myself the forager. That was my job in the family, is to go out, get all the supplies, gas up the car, whatever was open, get what was needed. And, Bree, I came back to the house and I was one of those people who had the bleach bath in my sink where I wiped everything down that I bought, put it in the refrigerator. I mean, I was really, really like on top of it, right? And I was talking to family in Washington State and other relatives. I mean, everybody was truly scared. And the beginning of this thing, and we're still scared, but in the beginning of this thing, it was really just an unknown and crazy territory, right? And so I don't think that overall it's been a bad job, but I think in the last 4 to 5 months, and that's where the arbitrary and capricious comes in, is that we've been picking winners and losers. I mean, come on, I don't know how many times we can say it, but gaming rooms and poker halls and not bars and some other businesses just doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
So let me ask, say pigs start flying 10 days from now and you get an override, the governor vetoes it, you're successful in getting this, her veto overridden. What's the next step? She calls you guys up, I want to extend this public health emergency, then what?
So the way the legislature works is when it speaks through the resolution process. So what I would envision, like in Hawaii, maybe I might amend this bill on the floor to 60 days because Hawaii's got 60 days. But you know, what the way the legislature speaks is they have hearings, or a hearing at least, to make sure all voices are heard on a substantive resolution. And once they have that public hearing, and say, for example, you know, it's overwhelming that this emergency should continue and everything else, you just pass the resolution and it's done. The governor's got the extension, no problem, or whatever else. If people come to the legislature and say there's a compelling discussion about why is this shut down, and can we get public health to work with us a little closer to move the goalpost and move forward on this? You know, maybe the governor says, you know, I heard that at the legislature. Okay, we're going to work with you. We've assigned, you know, so-and-so, so-and-so, and so-and-so. It looks like Governor Gutierrez is the guy really that's going out there and doing a lot of the cleanup lately. So Governor Gutierrez is going to take care of this and make sure that that group, you know, has their voice heard moving forward. And maybe we start ease the opening of bars and see how it goes, right? Okay, great. Everybody's voice has been heard. Real estate's been heard. They're going to get them back and moving. Pass the resolution. Governor, you got your emergency. So I think it's as simple as that. I mean, and I think that we would be as pragmatic as that.
Oh, we got another call. Norman?
Hello?
Yeah. Go ahead. You're on the link.
Hey, Senator. I just want to say that your bill really opens the eyes of the public, and I really appreciate that. As of someone that works in the food and beverage industry, it doesn't make sense to me that, you know, gambling halls can open, but bars can't, where people in those bars are trying to work hard for their families. And I just want to thank you again for the bill.
Did you hear that?
I did not, Bree. I'm sorry. I can't hear the phone calls.
It was from an individual who works in the food and beverage industry, and he said,
Okay.
"Yeah, thank you for introducing the bill,
Mm.
because, like you said,
know,
it didn't make sense for."
You know, Bree, I wanted to mention that one thing that Tom Pinehoff said that I didn't even think about was the anger over the issue between bars and restaurants. He said most of these restaurant establishments have bars. And people are going in there and they're drinking at the bars and they're eating and drinking and doing the same thing that you would be doing in a bar, maybe not with full-blown food, but maybe poo-poos and things like that. But he mentioned, imagine restaurants, Chris and Bree, the touch points on restaurants are even higher than bars, because you have all the cutlery, you have the plates, you have all of the activity. You actually have to staff up way more in a restaurant, so you got more staff. You got more people interacting actually in a restaurant than a bar, truthfully. Now, some will say that, oh, people are going to get irresponsible. They're not going to. Well, you know what? We have a lot of that federal money still. Maybe we get some more public health people that are doing more random checks. And if a bar is really screwing around and doesn't care about their business, and they're like, yeah, we're open, free for all, shut them down. So yeah, I can see the restaurant people wanting to go to 100%, and I could see the bar people saying, help us out.
What would you say to those critics who would look at the status of bars in other places like the States and say, hey, they're still closed in the States?
You know, yeah, and I think that, you know, the states are grappling with the same thing. You know, what's happening stateside also, the counter to that is that those bars are now formulating, legal cases against the states, saying that, you know, if you can open up restaurants and not bars, they're filing class action suits. And what happens if they prevail? If they prevail stateside in some of those states, and their suit says, from the time you open restaurants, we're saying as bars, you compensate us for not allowing us to open going forward until you allow us to open. If they prevail in those cases in court, that could be another potential liability for the government of Guam. So, you know, I know it's a difficult conversation, and I know that there's a stigma associated with bars. I don't go to bars anymore. I might go to happy hour once in a while. It's not personal for me. But the bottom line is that is its own economy. There's real people and real lives who own those businesses that are dying on the vine, and I just think they deserve a voice, as controversial as it is.
So what would your response be, that this really should be under the governor's authority to be able to declare these state of public health emergencies and be able to extend these public health emergencies, and that, you know, we're just, in passing this and in enacting this, we're creating 15 governors down at the legislature.
Yeah, I know that's a common response. Same thing. What happened when the governor before thought, if I need to spend $5 million after the typhoon, I'm going to spend $5 million. But the legislature said no, you'll spend $250,000 and then come back for more when we can see really what you're spending the money on. There's going to be this push and pull and this tug back and forth all the time. But if that's the will of the body, that this legislation is not correct and we keep everything intact, I'll accept it, Sabrina. I'll accept it. But what I will say, Chris and Bree and Jason, is that I did everything that I could because of the fact that people like the Chamber of Commerce came to me, the Guam Association of Realtors came to me, people that are desperate right now to open their businesses again came to me, and I did what I could. But I'll accept the deliberation of the body and whatever bill comes out. And running for office and doing what you do, you're not always going to be right. If I'm not right, I'm not right. But I tried.
Mm-hmm. What about the author of this superpowers law? Have you guys reached back to the former governor?
I don't want to put Governor Cabo on the spot here because he's very, very eloquent and good at speaking for himself. I have talked to him about this, and he thinks that the way the legislation was drafted during the time was right, but he says that I have a lot of merit to what I'm doing. I know that's been, by the way, I know that's been a Democrat talking point, and I just have to put it out there. Because I know that is, and then that's not what this is about. I don't want to drag Governor Calvo into this. He served well. He served his 8 years. He passed a piece of legislation 20 years ago that he thought was right for Guam. But every piece of legislation from time to time needs to be amended.
All right.
All right.
Well, good luck.
Good luck.
Hey, thanks, Chris.
You know what you got to do,
Jason, I
Chris?
always enjoy
Senator,
the link.
you just got to send the governor some, send her a goodie bag, you know what I mean? You got to kind of kiss up a little bit. That's how it works. That's just the way it is.
Yeah.
Okay?
You might want to even send some chocolates to your Democrat colleagues.
Yeah. Valentine's is coming up.
What's
Just
that?
send Auntie Lou a nice Valentine's.
Oh yeah, I'm glad we're going into session, and I'm sure that's what we'll do in the beginning after the Inifresi, is wish everybody a happy Valentine's and then get to the battle.
Ooh.
All right. Well, thank you, Senator.
Hey, thanks guys. Have a
Take
great
care.
day.
That's